Yeah. Shit, fresh dress, living large, German whips in my garage. Most my partners caught the charge for all this love like El DeBarge. Fresh dress, living large, German whips in my garage. Most my partners caught the charge for all this love like El DeBarge. We keep it rockin'. These chicks be flocking my coupe. We keep it rockin'. Fresh eggs outside of my stoop. We keep it rockin'. They love to give us some play. We keep it rockin'. Homeboy, we got him.
Hit the club, roll with me, we gon' hit the club. I'm back now, my Mac down, on black like my background. From the back door to the VIP, no charge, I'm VIP. Jesse James don't need ID, reppin' FAM9D. Now go hop in the truck though, baby girl gon' move on your butt though. And you know I'm still rollin' with the thugs though, so holla if you need, cause I'm cut though. All about the paper, see you later, cause I don't wanna date her. Nah, that's not my flavor, and I'm high as a T.O. skyscraper. You know, hop in the Bentley or Rolls Royce, you know, hop in the whip with a couple bad chicks, you know, and I'll be lit all day, all night, you know.
Hello and welcome to the CFB edition of the Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Riddell, aka Dfs85. I'm joined here by my man, Pete Cole, YFC Sports. Pete, we are going to be covering that main Saturday slate for you in college football, as we always do, a 12-gamer. We're going to go game by game, break down our top plays, any sneak plays, all that kind of stuff. So if you guys are watching live, we appreciate it. Make sure you guys, ask any questions, comments, concerns on the right side there. It's kind of a bittersweet moment for me. Most of you guys know, but if you don't, I am going to be moving on to another site with FTN. So this is going to be Pete and I's, not forever, but for now, last show together. So a bittersweet moment for me, Pete. I'm very sad about it, but let's go out with a bang. Make some money this weekend.
You're gonna make me tear up. No, but seriously, it's been a good run for a couple of years. It's been an honor to work beside you. I've actually learned a lot working with you. We've had some good times. We've had some good shows, and it's not over yet. It's just the beginning. But good luck, seriously. Good luck to you for in the future, and hopefully, the Super Show will be back at some point. Two of us.
Absolutely, yeah. Just trying to broaden my horizons a little bit, but yeah, you guys are doing some big things here at YFC, and I have no doubt that you'll continue to smash. I learned a lot from you as well, and our show together has done very well. And I'll be watching old episodes from time to time when I'm lonely at night. I will be Saturday morning. I'll still be back for the pre-lock show. That'll be my last bit of content, and I'll be in the Discord all day for YFC guys subs there as well, breaking down the night and late night slate as well. So we still have a couple more days together in that regard. So let's, like I said, go out with the bang. I want to see lots of GPP takedowns for us all. We'll cover PrizePicks tonight, any bets that we like, kind of talk about any content that's going on with the last couple of days here. We've got some CFL stuff going, MLB, the wild card race, NHL preseason started, NBA preseason starting Monday, and of course college sports and college basketball is literally 30-something days away. So it's right around the corner, folks. But let's dive right in. We're going to go game by game, as I said. Pete's going to kick things off and talk about Arkansas and Georgia. I didn't give you all crappy games this time.
Well, as I'm sitting here watching this 2-2 Yankee game, I love playoff baseball time. But college football. So yeah, I think the theme this week is actually there's some really good games and there's some really bad games, like bad DFS type games. And this may be one of the first ones. Arkansas and Georgia. Georgia's a great team, and they're minus 18 favorites. We got a 48 over under. Arkansas got like 15 implied. Georgia 33 implied. So can you really play anyone from this slate? I mean, I don't know. Arkansas has played well. I mean, they played really well against Texas. They looked good. They I mean, look what they did to Bijan Robinson in Texas. So I don't think it's a pushover. So I've been seeing a lot of people saying that there's most of the players are not playable in this game, but I think JT Daniels may be at 7-2. I mean, there's not a lot of great quarterbacks down that range. We saw he did against South Carolina, like 25 DK points, 23 for 31, 3 touchdowns. The problem is in the last week against Vandy, he only threw the ball 10 times. He's 9 for 10. They didn't need him. It was a huge blowout. But I think that Arkansas defense is good enough to make this a 4-quarter game. So Daniels actually may be potentially in play as a QB2, probably in GPPs as we get on later on. We'll be talking about some other big quarterbacks. But I really think, though, that we could probably see some mid-20s from Daniels today if Arkansas keeps him in that game. The only problem I do have with Daniels is I did see that he is dealing with a lat muscle injury. It came out in Kirby Smart's conference on Wednesday, his teleconference on Wednesday. So, I mean, he's playing, I'm assuming, but he did say his oblique is fine, but he's been having a little bit of a lat issue, bothered him last week. So the only thing that worries me, though, if they do get ahead, are they going to pull him earlier? So, but I still think Daniels is kind of in play. And I also on the Georgia side, Brock Bowers. I mean, he's 6'4". I mean, I don't like the price, but I mean, he's come onto the scene. I mean, against Clemson, he was really heavily involved, and now he's pretty much secured a consistent role in this offense. And I said Arkansas's got tough defense, so I'm not going to expect Georgia to do what they want on the ball, but they're going to see a lot of kind of that dink and dunk to Bowers. So I don't mind Bowers. GBP only at 6'4", and probably my favorite play in this slate for GBP as a value is Kyrus Jackson at 3-2. So Kyrus Jackson at 3-2. I don't mind him. He can definitely catch a bomb. He's playing a decent amount. Week 3, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 17. Week 4, 4 targets, 2 receptions for 35. Everything I'm reading about him is they do love Jackson. And I just had some stats up, and of course I just lost them. But he's probably my favorite value. There's some more values I think a wide receiver we like better this week. But he's one of kind of the middle type guys. But there's a bunch of good decent values of wide receiver this week. But Jackson is GPP only. Like, if you say you're making 5 or 6 lineups, I'd have no problem throwing Jackson in there in a couple of them. On the other side, on the Arkansas side, I mean, KJ Jefferson, he was really solid against A&M. Saturday, he was low price, but I don't think you can play anybody against this Georgia defense. Treylon Burks at 6'5" is kind of interesting, but that's it. I mean, honestly, if I'm making 20 lineups, I probably won't have one guy from Arkansas on a lineup because I really do respect this Georgia defense. So, if anything, possibly JT Daniels, GBP quarterback 2, Kyrus Jackson as a value play, as your third receiver somewhere if you're making a bunch of lineups, and maybe a little Brock Bowers. I just don't like the Bowers price at 6'4", but he's been getting the job done. So GBP only. So this is a GBP game.
Yeah, it's a tough price for sure with that low total. But Bowers is you saw the way they used him last week. He rushed a touchdown in, caught a couple. He's just, man, that guy's a beast. He's gonna be a big time player for us. But Georgia games are just, they're either womping on people or they're defensive struggles. So I agree. It's probably just GPP only. Moving on to a next game, more appealing, Tennessee versus Missouri. We have an over-under per DK of 64.5, which is actually quite high. We know that the Bama Ole Miss game is very high, and then the Texas TCU game is rather kind of high. But this is the third highest total on the slate, Tennessee, Missouri. And I don't think people realize that Missouri is playing in games that are generating a lot of fantasy points. And Tennessee on the other side, their defense hasn't, been that bad either in terms of giving up fantasy points. So this is one we're going to want to definitely target. Right now I have Missouri -3 on the spread and some good prices. And as far as early projections go, there's some good numbers here. As far as quarterbacks starting out, Connor Bazelak at 7.3, he's got a projection of almost 26 fantasy points, which is a top 10 score at the position this weekend. And I really don't mind him. That price of 7.3 is not too shabby, actually. And I think he could do some real damage with it. See, he's been throwing the ball a lot. 2 of his last 3, he's had 41 plus attempts. Saw that against Boston College last week. The game against Kentucky, which was a really fun game. That's so far to me, that's been probably the best like fantasy wise game to watch. It was on a night slate back in week 2 where they lost 35-28 against Kentucky, but Wandale was going ham. But Basilic stepped in there, threw for almost 300 yards on 51 pass attempts, put up about 30 fantasy points, 4 touchdowns. So we know Tyler Batty is the man in this offense, but Basilic is playing a lot better than I think people realize. Will I use him in my main lineup? Perhaps not. But for GPPs, he's a guy that if he throws up 30 at 7-3 and matches, one of these guys like Cunningham or Coral, for 2-3K cheaper, shit, you're going to be feeling really good about yourself. So I definitely want exposure to Basilic. And then as far as Tyler Batty goes, he's a boss. He's 8-2 now. They're making us make a decision on him. And that's what's going to be tough because he continues to produce. He hasn't been under 27 fantasy points yet this year. Posted another solid line against Boston College. He had 5 receptions, 34 yards, 72 rushing yards. It's rare for him to go over 100 yards one way or the other, but combined he will. So he's still definitely in play here. But like I said, the decision at 8-2 is going to be tough because the prices on the top tier quarterbacks this week are very high. So it's not a plug and play on him like it usually is, but he's certainly in play if you can fit him comfortably. And he's going to be the guy that you'd want to play, if you want Missouri exposure in your cash. As far as receivers go, nobody really that I'd be looking at. Break down the targets for you guys so you can see Kiki Chisholm has 29 and then Tyler has 25. So he's second on the team as a running back. And you have Toski Dove, Chance Looper with 17 each, Dominic Lovett with 14, and Barrett Bannister with 12. Mookie Cooper was a guy that I thought was going to be really good for them. The transfer, he has 12 targets, 11 catches, 99 yards, but it just hasn't quite come together for him just yet. As far as GPP purposes go, I really don't mind doing like a Chisholm Basilic or, like a Daniel Parker, who's at 3-4, who I still really like in Basilic, but it's not a situation you want to target for cash. There's going to be points though. This is how the game stack written all over it. On the Tennessee side, Milton is coming along. He didn't start last week and he's been banged up, but they're saying he's almost ready to practice at full speed. So I don't expect him to play. Hooker's also banged up. Hendon Hooker, that's one of Pete's guys when he's at Virginia Tech. His status is no longer unclear, like it says on the initial game note. He has looks like he's going to play now. He's practicing again and looks like he's trending towards the right direction. He's only 6'8". Assuming that he does start and there's no setbacks, 6'8" is a really strong price for Hendon Hooker in a matchup where this Missouri defense, especially the rush defense of Missouri, is quite bad. They're giving up, they're giving up 270 yards on the ground right now. And that includes a big game against Chris Rodriguez of Kentucky. So that's not a missed pipe or anything or I didn't see them wrong. They're literally giving up that kind of yardage. A couple of stat lines. Lou Nichols from Central Michigan rushed for 135 and 1 against them. Kentucky, Chris Rodriguez, 198 and 2. And we just saw Garwo, who I wish we would have played this past week. I think we talked about him a little bit last week that we liked him. He ran for 175 and 2. So this Missouri defense is atrocious on the ground. Hooker, we know, is a dual threat type of quarterback. He'll throw for 200 yards, but he also has an opportunity to rush for 100 yards. So as long as Hooker starts, as long as he's healthy, 6'8" is a very strong price for him. He's in the QB1, QB2 territory for me. I've been messing with the 4 RB thing. This week I will be running 2 quarterbacks. This is a slate to run 2 quarterbacks. I'm not going to get cute there. Hooker's a guy that I could see put in the super flex and winning some money with. So big time on him. Now, also, I just mentioned almost 300 yards a game on the ground. That's phenomenal, right? So we need to look at these Tennessee running backs. Tyon Evans, who's my personal favorite, although he's 6'2", and then Jabari Small, who's priced at 4'4". Both are definitely in play. They're going to continue to kind of split carries, which kind of limits the upside a tad. But Small, at just 4'4" is definitely somebody you want to play. He's going to be looking at, approximately 15 touches, probably about 10 to 12 carries, a couple receptions, that type of thing. So at least 10 fantasy points at 4'4" I like, with the upside for more if he scores a touchdown. And then Evans is more of that, 15 to 16 carry guy. He had 3 receptions in the Florida game for 71 yards and a touchdown. He'd typically been the guy getting the pass catching work, but Small was hurt and banged up. Now they're both healthy. They're going to cannibalize each other. But because this rushing defense of Missouri is so atrocious, I think you definitely want to get exposure to these guys. And Small at 4'4", just makes things really easy for the rest of your build with these high-priced quarterbacks. So right now I'm looking at small. Even though Evans is my favorite player of those two, like for the season, I'll take the discount on small. And then as far as the receivers go, nobody really that steps out. Velus Jones has the most targets with 14. And then my dude, Javonte Payton, the Mississippi State transfer, he's got 13, 7 catches, 142 and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns. He had a touchdown on that late slate for us last week at low ownership. That was nice. But they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players with 10 or more targets. Plus you have the running backs and Tyon Evans with 7. And Jalen Wright and what their RB3 was 7. So they spread the ball out a lot in the passing game. I would not be looking to target any of these guys. Peyton's price is up to 5.2 now after his solid 16 game last week. So I would just be looking at the running backs or Hendon Hooker here. But I'm really quite excited about this game. I just don't know that we'll be able to get Batty in there at 8-2 because we have Bijan, at 8-7. They're putting us to the test as can we play both every week. I've been doing it. I think you've been for the most part doing it as well. Just putting Robinson and Batty in every single lineup that we make, or a main at least, because they've been so good. And now they're priced over 8K, so it's going to be hard to choose. Right now, I would probably lean towards Robinson, but Tyler is at home. So maybe he gets the tiebreaker because of home and in a high-scoring game, although that Texas game projects to be high-scoring too. So a lot to like in this game. Cash-wise, Jabari Small and Hendon Hooker are definitely in the mix. I like Evans in GPP at the higher price. And then for Missouri, Tyler Batty, if you can fit him. And then Basilic is I think, going to be an elite QB for GPPs here. He has a chance to really hurt your lineup, but he could also put up 30 and match the big boys. And then you can pick or choose the receivers there. Like I said, Chisholm has the target lead, but a guy like Parker or Bannister or even a Mookie Cooper who's only 3.2, maybe you throw one of those guys out there and hope for the best. Actually, I just got a notification that Cooper's out, so never mind. Mookie Cooper's out this weekend, so actually that'll help. That'll help like someone like Daniel Parker, who I like, or Bannister, both at 3-4 because Cooper's out. So a lot to like there, though. Definitely going to be mini stacking that in a GPP lineup somewhere. I'm running 20+ lineups this weekend, so I'll have a stack somewhere. Do you have anything you want to add to that one before we move on?
Well, I like Jabari Small. I like the small price at 4.4. As I think that the Missouri defense is horrible. The rush defense, so I like Small, and I think I like Small and Evans, but small price. I came in. Did you mention Hyatt there? Because I have some interest in Hyatt, mainly Hyatt's price at 4.2. That's kind of a value. I mean, at 3.8. So, and more importantly, the Yankees just went ahead 5-2. Judge home run, Torres home run. Judge is second in the game. So Yankees. Chocolate. And your dog is eating chocolate.
Yeah, sorry. My kid's fucking around. Sorry about that. I forgot to mute myself.
That's all right. I'll give you an update in the Yankees game because Torres hit a home run, Judge hit his second, and we're up 5-2 now. And the Red Sox are getting beat 6-2. So your Mariners, this could be a Yankees Mariners wild card. That would be freaking dope, man. All right, is it the Michigan game next, or are you doing Texas?
Yeah. So go ahead and sorry about that. That just threw me off. I had to freak out there.
That's all right.
Yes, Wisconsin. You're on Michigan versus Wisconsin. You're up.
This is gonna be really quick because so we got 43.5 over under. Pretty much a pick 'em, right? 22.75 each. My shit is really slow tonight, but whatever. To me, this is a great game to watch. Bad DFS game. Honestly, if I'm making 50 MME lineups, I probably don't have any of these players. I can't just play any of these guys. Both teams are 22 implieds. But I do have a couple of decent stats to throw out there for Michigan. Like I said, I don't like it for DFS, and I don't want to throw out any names and give anybody any wild options to play anybody seriously. But it's interesting. So you got Michigan and Wisconsin. To me, the two teams go in different directions. Let me see here. Wisconsin's obviously the toughest team Michigan's going to play so far, but let me see, Michigan's rushing yards. This is crazy lopsided. Michigan has run 1,200 yards while they've held opponents to like 584 yards on the ground. So I think it's pretty impressive. Blake Corum and Haskins both have combined for over 700 yards on the ground. They lead the Big Ten in total rushing yards. They pretty much have relied on the ground game to carry them so far this season. Third down chances of let me see. In third and short, Michigan is 26th in nation, converting on third down at 48.7%. Wisconsin right now is 5th worst in the nation on third down, converting 27% of their chances. And then red zone, another problem with Wisconsin. Wolverines have scored 16 of their 17 red zone possessions with 12 touchdowns, only 4 field goals. And Wisconsin's been terrible. And Corum and Haskins have combined for 13 touchdowns in the red zone through the 4 games. So, but either way, honestly, I'm not playing Cade McNamara. I'm not playing Graham Mertz. Ches Malusi, I mean, if anything, I think he's got a high watermark of 10 fantasy points, but the same in Corum. Unless you see something different from me, to me, this is a runaway from DFS. Sit home, watch the game on TV, enjoy it. But maybe a Danny Davis at 4-4. But no, I said if I'm making 25, 30 laps, I don't think I have one player from this game in it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But you got two. I just threw some stats out there. 2 different, decent defenses. Michigan's only allowed 131, rushing 171. Wisconsin's allowing 187 passing, only 23 rushing yards per game. Wisconsin. So this is not a DFS game. Great game else. Yeah. And to me, you move on to the next one.
Yeah, no, and the price on Corum's up to almost 8K as well, so you don't really need to look to him. Haskins at 6'3", it would be intriguing to me if they were at home, I think, in this game, but on the road against Wisconsin, that's a tough ask. So I agree. It's really not going to be one. I know there'll be some exposure here for the people who do the MME thing, and that makes sense, but I don't, there's really no upside here. It's going to look very ugly like the game last week did with Notre Dame and Wisconsin. I know Notre Dame ended up piling some points on there later in the game, but it was ugly getting there. So Texas versus TCU. We have a 65.5 over under on this one, -5 for Texas. This is the second highest scoring game on the slate per the DK Sportsbook. And certainly a lot to like here. Gotta give props to Casey Thompson. He got the start over Card. Hudson Card was the guy that had gotten the start, and we thought that he was going to be something. But Thompson, my Lord, put up 43 fantasy points against Texas Tech last week, 303 yards, 5 touchdowns, had a rushing score at that. And he's been a little bit of a dual threat guy back against Arkansas. That tough loss they had, he had 2 rushing touchdowns against them. So they did price him up though, so 8-4. So unfortunately, we didn't get to enjoy that cheaper price of the 7-2. But I definitely think in play at 8-4. The TCU defense, I definitely overvalued them last week. I thought they would do much better against that SMU offense, and maybe it's just that SMU offense is that goddamn good that TCU, couldn't stop them. But I do think this TCU defense is a little softer than maybe I thought originally. So I do like some Texas guys here. Looking at it, Thompson is in play at 8-4, but Bijan I think is at, I like Batty. I'm a big Batty guy. I just talked about him, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to find that extra 500 to pay for Bijan Robinson because man, he's just so dang good. And I agree. That SMU game, when we thought it was going to be, and it was a lot of passing, but the running backs for SMU, holy hell, man! Bentley for 153 and a touchdown. Trey Siggers went out for 110. I mean, damn near 300 yards in the game against this TCU. And we had mentioned in the Cal game, Damian Moore, he rushed for 2 touchdowns and like 80 against them, and they didn't have any more other running. They had another good running back. I think, there's some exposure here against this TCU rush defense that I think we're going to be targeting against them a lot. So Bijan is definitely the guy that I'm going to have to go up and pay for. I wonder if his price will keep some people down. He's been hovering around 30 to 40% most weeks. So I am hopeful that people see the price and say, no, I can't do it, because it isn't going to be easy to just go, Bijan, and then go to QB and say, I'm playing Malik and Matt or Bryce Young, 2 of the top 3. No, yeah. That would be super easy to do that.
not with the Bama game. It's not. No.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of chalk is going to come out of that game, but they did I'm really thankful that DK priced it like this and not stupidly like 7K for Matt or something. So it makes you make that decision. But yes, I'm taking Bijan definitely. I know it's a high price, but I mean, if Bentley and Siggers can do that to TCU, what do you think Bijan will do? And he'll get some reception work as well, which is nice. If Thompson is going to be as good as he looked last game, then yeah, there's definitely a lot to like here. As far as receivers go, I know you especially were kicking yourself, but I was too, because you mentioned Xavier Worthy, and then I looked into it and I was like, yeah, this guy is the truth. But then I ended up going away from him for whatever reason, and he went nuts, 103 damn touchdowns for 35 fantasy points. Now he's priced up to 6.2, so we don't get a discount on him anymore. It's certainly going to be hard to fit him in now.
And we were praising him on his show also. We were praising him. I mean, I was and I didn't use him on main lineup. So
yeah. There is a little intriguing price here on Josh Moore at 3.8. He has been dealing with an ankle injury that he suffered in practice, but it sounds like Sarkisian said he's going to be good to go and he's going to play. So he is definitely interesting at 3.8 because the pass defense of TCU too. I mean, Mordecai threw 4 touchdowns to almost 250 yards. So like I said, I think I might have overvalued this TCU defense, and now that they're playing big offenses, they're usable. So if you want exposure to Texas offense and you want to get a little less chalky somewhere, I think at the wide receiver position for Texas, you could certainly look at a guy like Moore, as long as he's good to go, like they say, at 3.8. Whittington, I think, is back in play. I know he hasn't really been that good, but at 5.5, he's certainly someone to look at. He did have, in that last game, Texas Tech, he had 5 for 93 and a touchdown. So he also did well along with Worthy. If Thompson's going to solidify himself as a QB1, I feel pretty decent about Whittington at the 5.5 price. I don't know that, I haven't tried to build a lineup yet, so it really depends on how, that's going to look. I have a feeling we're going to have to find some other values here. But Whittington's definitely back in play, especially if people are going to go to Worthy. And then I'd like to say Jared Wiley at 3.4, but he didn't do anything last game, so we'll have to wait and see with him. On the TCU side, Max Duggan, he's 9K now. He's definitely a dual threat guy. He kind of let us down against SMU. He only had the 25 fantasy points. I think he's certainly in play at the 9K, but mostly in GPPs and in game stack situations. He has had a very nice start to the season, throwing for over 700 yards, 7 touchdowns, and he has 2 rushing touchdowns on the year, over 100 rushing yards. But I think if I was going to use somebody from TCU, probably Zach Evans. And his price, it keeps creeping up, so we're going to be running out of opportunities to get him. But back-to-back games over 100 yards, it seems his touches are going to be hovering around that 18 to 20 mark. The coaching staff has said they want to limit him to 12 to 13, which is what keeps scaring me off of him. But back-to-back games, they've given him big touches. So it seems like they're going to continue doing that. And if they want to win games, they're going to have to feed him. Jim Ricardo has been hurt, so that's helped. Kendre Miller, I know he had a touchdown last game, but he doesn't really run with the veracity that Evans does. And wide receiver wise, there's just Duggan. He's a decent enough passer, but there's not a lot of consistency there. And Evans is a guy that they know they're going to get offense from. So if you're going to use anybody from the TCU side, I think it would probably be Evans. But again, pricing is very strict this weekend, very stiff. It's going to be tough to be able to fit him in there. So I think he's probably going to end up being just a GPP option only. I do like that Quentin Johnson's price has dropped back below 7K, but still going to be tough to use him. It was actually, if you saw in that game, but Tay Barber, who was kind of their stud last year, went off for 114 and a touchdown. So he popped a little bit. So I wonder if people would chase him at 4.8. I probably wouldn't. But that Texas secondary has been beatable the last 2 seasons. So if you want a TCU receiver in there, I definitely think that Barber's in play. Or a guy like Darius Davis, who's been hovering around 8 to 9 fantasy points. He's priced at 4K. But otherwise, yeah, it's Bijan for me, and then maybe Whittington if I can fit him and see how my build goes. And then for GPPs, I think I want to have Zach Evans going forward the rest of the season. I want at least one lineup with Zach Evans in it because I think, yeah, he's going to have a special season if they allow him to keep touching the ball like that. The staff keeps saying they're going to limit his touches, which is very idiotic. But as long as he keeps getting 20 or 20 plus, it's going to be a big time play. So a really nice game for DFS. We have some very sexy options here. With that being said, we can move on to the next one. Unless you have anything you want to say there. The next game would be USC and Colorado.
All right, USC Colorado. This is another game kind of hard to get a grasp on. I believe it's even. So 51 over under, not great, but pretty much I got both implied 25, 50 each implied. So straight up one thing this game does showcase the premier wide receiver in college football, Drake London. I think Drake London's a stud. He's going to be an NFL star. He's a target hog, 14 targets. 34% of the team target share. He's not cheap. I think Drake London this week he's 8-5. It's going to be hard to get him in a main lineup when you search for Bama, Ole Miss, the Corrals, and those guys, Bijans. But Drake London's a stud. But to me, he's probably GDP only. I still think he's the best receiver in football. But once again, I don't think you can get him in your lineup unless you go cheap at quarterback. And I think there's enough wide receiver value on his slate where you can drop one and down to GBP play only. But he's a really good GBP play. He's banged up a little bit, but that's going to happen, though, when you're getting all these kind of targets. The rest of his receivers, Gary Bryant, he's Gary Bryant GBP play. I don't mind Taj Washington. Washington's averaging 6 targets a game, 4 receptions, 43 yards. So not bad. I probably like Taj Washington at 4.3, maybe a little bit better than Bryant. What's Bryant's price? I thought I had Bryant's price in front of me here. 5.1. So I probably do like Taj Washington a little better than Gary Bryant. Quarterback Slovis. It's a tough one. Is Slovis in play or isn't he? Last week he had like 35-5. Then we had 1 touchdown. And if you think about it, if he had like 1 or 2 touchdowns, next we're talking about the big day Slovis had. So, but Slovis has struggled. He's, now coming. He had great freshman year, all first team Pac-12 last year, but in 4 starts, he's completed 64% of his passes, 842 yards, 6.5 yards per attempt, which ranks number 92 nationally, a 9th in the Pac-12. 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 3 of them coming in the last week's loss. But once again, when you got Drake London as your receiver, who's an All-American, who's a stud, playing through nagging injuries, you're in good shape. I think Slovis London is a great GBP combo. So when you go with the true alpha like London, but once again, I don't think you can play London with a Bama on the slate. Anybody else here? Keontae Ingram, the running back, 6'7". One positive thing I'm seeing about Ingram. Now, going into the season, USC's plan was to have a 1A running back and a 1B running back with Balbe Malpie. I just blew his name up. But if you watch last week's game, he took the first 10 handoffs. And when the game was over, he carried about 14 times, 14 of USC's 18 designed run plays. He was on the field for 49 plays compared to Malpie's 29. So have they announced that Ingram is now the featured back of the offense? No. But you look at the numbers, watch the games, it looks like he's kind of making that turn. So 6.7 is not a great price for Ingram, but definitely GBP. I could see Ingram putting up, 18, 20 points, DK points, probably, more like a 4, like a 12 or 13. But I don't mind Ingram at all on the USC side. Colorado side, man, this offense is bad. Right now, you think USC's struggling? You think USC's offense is struggling? Against FBS opponents, Colorado's averaging 6.7 points, 191 total yards, pretty much, which is actually dead last out of the 130 FBS teams. And they're averaging 4.10 yards per play, which is worse than all but 5 others. Only Vanderbilt is worse than the Power 5 teams. So Colorado is not a great offensive team. I made the mistake of running Brandon Lewis here a couple weeks ago. That was my one main week loss this year, running Lewis. I'll never do that again. If you do remember, though, when we had our preview shows and we were talking about Jarek Broussard, and not pat myself on the back, but I did say that I could see Broussard having a tough year this year when they ran the shed at him last year, and we're seeing it right now. I still think Broussard's a decent running back, but he's not the player that everybody thinks he was. He still leads the team. He's got 188 rushing yards, 44 attempts. Alex Fontenot comes in. He's got 2 touchdowns, 148 yards, 37 carries. If anything, I think Lewis is the best runner out of all of them. He's capable. So nobody from Colorado.
I think he's been hurt. He's been playing hurt. It's undisclosed, but he's definitely not something
Lewis?
wrong with him for sure.
Lewis?
Jared Broussard.
Oh, wait,
He's been playing hurt.
That's a good point. I heard that I think 2 weeks ago, right? Which we thought that there was a question. He was questionable in the game. So and maybe it's, he had a great year last year, but he's unplayable. He's unplayable now at 5'5". I don't think, you want to run GPP, great. We see what he did last year, but mainly this is a GPP game. It's a good game. It's a tight game, but Colorado's got no offense. Slow but starts to figure stuff out. And it features, Drake London, who I think is the best receiver in football. But GPP only today. Because once again, we get to the Bama Ole Miss game. There's so many plays there where it's going to be tough to put one in at 8-5 in your lineup.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be a race to fitting as much as you can from that game. But there's, there 2-3 other games with high totals too, where maybe some of these really good plays are going to end up lower owned. Game I'm going to talk about next, Louisville, Wake Forest. This could be a game that does end up with lower ownership than it should, except for one obvious spot. 61.5 over under. Wake Forest -6.5 right now. Defensively, Louisville has not been good. They're giving up 172.8 yards on the ground, almost 425 yards of offense to their opponents. And then on the Wake Forest side, defensively, they've been pretty stout, giving up 120 yards on the ground and just about 350 yards in the through total. So for Louisville, it really, for me, as it is most weeks, Malik Cunningham is the only option I typically look for my main lineup. It's a tough price at 9.5, but I think he's earned the right to be considered, near must play every week. Matchup proof, I guess is what I should say. 3 of his 4 games, he's been over 30 fantasy points, and the one he wasn't, it was 29.98. So basically 30. Florida State game ended up being closer than I thought, and I kicked myself because I didn't end up using him in my main in that game, and he had another 36 fantasy points. So big time rushing upside. He's been able to throw for 200 plus passing yards in 3 straight, despite his receivers kind of being a little inconsistent. So I'm not afraid to use Cunningham if I can fit him. I don't know that I will be able to, but it would not surprise me to see him be the top scorer this week. He's an elite GPP play overall, though, because people are probably going to end up not using him. The Louisville running backs, I'm really not in. Mitchell, people keep trying to make him a thing. I'm Hassan Hall's in the doghouse. It's not a situation I want to touch. As far as the receivers go, Braden Smith is out for the rest of the season. He was expected to step up and be the WR1. It wasn't happening. I like Marshawn Ford still at 4.7. I think, if you're looking to pair somebody with Cunningham, I think he's the most pairable guy. At 4.7, he's their most consistent option, the security blanket in the red zone. See, he had 100 yards against UCF, followed that up with 6 catches for 52 yards against FSU. So he's definitely in play for GPPs with Cunningham. But, as far as Marshall, Watkins, those guys go, they could have their moments. But, yeah, it'd be Cunningham or bust for me, I think. On the Wake Forest side, Hartman is definitely in play here because the defense of Louisville has been so bad. Hartman just is a very safe option. At 7.5, it's a fine price for him. He's the type of guy, kind of reminded me of what Will Rogers was last week, just kind of in that safe zone. It's going to get you 25 fantasy points, roughly, 23 to 25, maybe not a lot over the top of that, but rarely anything under that. So he's kind of just one of those safe plays. So I don't mind him at all either. The running backs for Wake Forest, I'm probably staying away from now. CBS was in a bit of a timeshare early, and then it seemed like he was separating himself again in that FSU game, and then he went back to a timeshare. He still did have 16 carries last week. So compared to Turner, who had 12, and then they got Ellison involved as well, who had 13. He still technically led the backfield, but he only had 47 yards, and they're switching off series. So it's like one series will be for Turner, one for Justin Ellison. Ellison looked like the best runner on the team to me last week, but again, that was just one game. So I'm really not touching them at all. Turner 3-4 is interesting. Ellison 4-3 is interesting, but it's a disaster now. So the running back situation, I'm not on. Now, A.T. Perry has been leading the team going into last week. He had 21 targets. Roberson has the target lead now at 24, but Perry was up to this point, been the most consistent player. He's priced at 6.5, which you're not paying, but he has been a very reliable, consistent option for Hartman. We haven't had the Ja'Cory Roberson blow-up game just yet. He did get close to 100 yards last week, 4 catches for 91 yards. His price has taken a massive dip to 5.2. This is a spot. I would say he's probably going to be the highest owned player on the slate. And at 5.2, we're continually waiting for the Roberson blow-up game. This is a good spot for it to happen against this Louisville defense. We saw Ole Miss in that week 1, tear them up. We've seen multiple teams. I mean, even FSU was having some success throwing the ball. UCF receivers went off against them. There's a good bet that Roberson goes nuts here. And at 5.2, he's going to be one of the top values in terms of point per dollar. Dropping from 7K to 5.2 after a 13 is a little bit more aggressive. And in his first 2 weeks, he was right around 16, 17 fantasy points. So it's not as if he's been a stiff. He just hasn't been getting the targets that we thought. 24 is the lead on this team. But at this point in 4 games, I thought we were going to see like 50 plus targets to this point. Like I was expecting 150 plus targets for this kid, and it just hasn't happened yet. But it looks like he's starting to get comfortable again. Against FSU, he wasn't on the field a lot. It seemed like something happened there. I don't know if there was a doghouse. I know he lost a fumble. I don't know if they benched him over that. But he definitely looked more like his normal self against Virginia. So I would expect big ownership on him. As far as this game goes, like I said, expect outside of him a lot of low ownership. Cunningham, Hartman, I don't see ownership on those guys. The running backs definitely not. So as far as leverage goes, this makes sense as a game stack that it wouldn't surprise me to see it go down, to the wire or be like a 37-31 type of score where, Hartman's thrown 3, Cunningham's got 4, and the receivers go nuts. So definitely get your exposure here. As a sneaky play, I like Taylor Morin at 4.3. He had 3 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown last week. He was actually getting some deep balls. He would have had a second touchdown, but they just missed him. That would have put him over 100 yards on just 4 catches. The week before that, he had 7 catches for 41 yards. So he's been very reliable at 4.3. I think he's a little underpriced. He was 1K more last week, and he had his best game of the season and dropped 1K. So don't sleep on Taylor Moore. And if you're looking for a little bit of leverage off Roberson in your alt lineups, and he has some touchdown upside as well, or at least equal touchdown equity in this offense currently as Roberson, because he just hasn't been getting it done just yet. But with that being said, he's definitely your cash lock because of his price. All right. So
this is probably this is the last week I'm using Roberson. I mean, I think he's a core play. I think he's a core play at 5.2. But if he doesn't come through this week, and I think I'm using him every week, even on off sites, I'm done with him. Then that means obviously, and I'm a Sam Hartman guy, and I can't remember if you just said though, but one thing that surprised me about Hartman, he's got a 9-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. So he's actually playing smart football. I like Wake Forest.
Yeah, he's making good throws. I mean, just watching the game against Virginia last week, he was really surgical about his passing and not forcing it in bad windows and making good decisions. So he just won't be owned.
Sneaky shootout.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to be owned because he's probably likely going to sit there between 23 to 25 fantasy points. But if he's able to, if it goes to OT or a shootout, like you said, and he throws 4, maybe even 5 touchdowns, he'll sail over 30 as well at 5% ownership. So just don't sleep on this game for sure. But this takes us into the game of the week, right? Ole Miss versus Bama. There's a lot of debate about that, because I saw minus 14.5, people talking about Ole Miss covering, which they can, but Ole Miss defense still isn't shaping up. The over under is massive. So tell us about this one, because there's a lot we want to play, but the prices on a lot of these players is very high. I mean, we have a 10K quarterback in Bryce Young.
Yeah, I tried to write some notes in this game, so bear with me if I feel like sounds like I'm all over the place. But this is the big one for the week. I mean, especially in the southern part of the country, this is big. I mean, I'm in Florida and people are talking about it. So people think Alabama's vulnerable. They think that the Rebels are going to give them a challenge, which is cool. I mean, you like to see games like this. 80 over under 79.5, crazy.
Nuts, insane.
And Bama, even though Bama's a 2 touchdown favorite, when Ole Miss has got a 32 implied, and Bama's looking at a 46.7. So looking at the implieds for the week, So I didn't even realize that Wake Forest is the second highest in play of the week at 34.5. But Mississippi right there, Mississippi with 32 and a quarter. So a game with a lot of points. Bama's good, but I think right here you got two quarterbacks. First of all, there's no one not in play in this game. I mean all the starters are in play. You can make reasons for all of them in your cash line PvP lineups. It's pretty much how you build your lineups. But I do think looking at cash, and I could be wrong, but I really do think cash lineups are going to be around. Can you build a cash lineup with Bryce Young and Matt Corral in your lineup? Which I think you can. Because I was playing with it a little bit. I think you got Young, Corral, and Braylon Sanders from Mississippi at 4-8. I think those three guys are pretty much cash plays in this game. Mainly because Sanders 4-8 price. I mean, 15 targets, 7 receptions, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns. But he's third in team targets, receptions. This is Edwards. I don't have to get into this whole stuff about how good Young is, and how good Corral is. I mean, I honestly, I think Corral is a better quarterback than Bryce Young, numbers wise. But I think you got to find room for both these guys in your main lineup for cash. And I know you've been talking about Cunningham, Hartman, a couple other guys. I do think you got to play both these guys in cash if you can find a way around it. Jahleel Billingsley. Let's go around from Bama. Billingsley's 3-6. So it does look like he's out of the doghouse. I mean, touchdowns, that whole virus, whatever, getting a shot, bullshit. But it sounds like he's out of the doghouse. Touchdowns, back-to-back games, 5 receptions, 105 yards last week. I think Billingsley is a DBP play, but I do see the offense is better with Billingsley from watching the last week's game. And when you got a game with a 80 total, a sub 4K receiver who's pretty much a W3, he's going to be high owned. So, and the problem is if you don't have Billingsley and he goes off for 1 or 2 touchdowns, you're kind of going to get screwed. So that's why I almost put Billingsley this is a tough. I want my whole main cash lineup in this whole game. But right now I'm looking at Young, Corral, Sanders, and Billingsley possibly in a cash lineup, mainly because Billingsley's price. So I saw a stat also. So I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but about running. Last year, Ole Miss ran the shit out of the ball against Bama. They had 2 running backs go over 120 yards each, 2 touchdowns each. Last week or 2 weeks ago, Florida ran all over Bama, and not just the quarterback. I think they had like 170, 168 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. So my question is that a weak spot for Bama? And if it is, to me, you got a bunch of running backs. You got Early, you got Connor, you got Parrish, all on play. But I kind of like Ely. Jerry Ely at 6'1". That's kind of like my sneaky play this game. I think the salary is okay. I mean, it is. I mean, it is a fairly even running back committee, but he does have 24.4% of the rush attempts. I think he is their best pass catching back. We know that they're going to be down. We know they're going to be firing the ball. So Ely is my top play at the running backs, and I'm not saying I'm not playing him in my main lineup, but I do like Ely in this spot. You could talk all day about these guys, but I think, when you got a guy like Drummond, Danteo Drummond, he's an elite play in the slot. Braylon, out wide. He plays out wide, 15 targets at 4.8. Great play. I'm back and forth on Mingo. I think you may be more of a Mingo guy than I am. But I think to me, Drummond is more of an elite play in the slot. So I like Drummond and Braylon. Maybe you can talk me into Mingo. But last year, though, they scored 48 points. I know Mingo and Drummond had tough games, but once again, Bam had a different type of secondary also. So going back to some running backs, I think Brian Robertson should be fine. I know he's been hurting, but it seems to me like they've been kind of like holding him off, so he should be ready to go this week. If not, we got this kid, Jace McClellan. So I think if Robinson is limited in any way, I think it's a rib injury with Brian Robinson, McClellan could get the beneficiary of the plays. Let me see. He's second on the depth chart, 12 carries last week compared to Roy Dell Williams, who saw 11. So I kind of like McClellan's, but I think Robinson's ready to go. Mechie, I mean, he hasn't been unleashed yet. This could be the game. And we talk about Billingsley. I think once again the offense is better with Billingsley in the game and play, not in the doghouse. So kind of to wrap this up, I know I've been rambling, but I think Bryce Young's a core play. I think at 10-0, I think you need Corral in your cash lineup. We talked about this a couple weeks ago in that 7 p.m. Saturday slate with Corral and Sam Howell, and I made a mistake, I think, of not playing one of them. I think you need Corral and Young in your lineup. These guys are both projected over 35 DK points. You can easily get 40 DK points. And then as a matter of, to me, Sanders a 4.8's a play, cash play. Billingsley, I think, to me, is a GVP play, but I think it's a cash play because of the price. And if he does go off, you're screwed if you don't have him. And then guys like Robinson, Mechie, Drummond, Jameson Williams, I didn't really talk about, but I think because I think Mechie's even cheaper than Jameson Williams this week. They're all GVP plays, but everybody on this slate is pretty much in play, including Slade Bolden, JoJo Earl, Henry Parrish, all these guys. When you got an 80 over under, you got to have a piece of this. The question is how much of a piece of it, and then can you make a lineup with Bryce Young and Matt Corral in your main lineup?
Are you not playing Bijan Robinson probably, or do you think you are?
That's the question. Can you make
play? Because if you play Matt Young and Bijan, you got 4-4 left. You're gonna be playing a lot of value,
and that's a Billingsley at 3. You can play Billingsley at 3.6, Braylon Sanders at 4.8. That's it.
You got to play Roberson.
Okay, so here's the question:
5-2. You got Roberson.
Are you playing Bryce Young or Matt Corral? Say you're only playing one of them quarterbacks. Are you playing Bryce Young or Matt Corral?
I'm probably playing Young because he's at home at the end of the day. I think Matt's definitely in play. I mean, shoot, they're gonna score a lot. But I don't know. That's tough.
I haven't tried to make a lineup yet.
Bama's defense is beatable on the ground for sure, but at home, I don't know. The thing is too, if they get a big lead, then he'll have to throw even more. If you go like a Roberson, Billingsley, Sanders, like we're talking here, that leaves you with 4-2 for a running back. You got 85 left for a flex and a running back. So that's just a lineup example.
Yeah,
you're not going to get any elite. You're not going to get an elite tier, wide receiver. You're going to have to play.
Okay, so who do we? If we play Bryce Young,
running back.
If we're playing Bryce Young as a QB, who'll be using a superflex? So we're using Corral. We need like a 7. We need like a 7.5 quarterback, like a Daniels.
So. Yeah, Daniels certainly. Yeah, I know you mentioned.
I'm just saying that for example because of his price.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
Slovis is in play. I really like Hooker. I'm probably on my own there as long as he plays. I mean, he's only going to be 6'8" against that Missouri rush defense.
No, that's
giving up 300 yards. So there's some options. I do think we may have to go at the super flex and slightly cheap at QB, the second one. But there's plays.
Yeah,
there.
I agree.
There's plays.
Maybe Slovis at 7.1 is probably the cheapest you can go. Oh no, Hooker 6'8".
Yeah,
and we haven't got to Tanner McKee yet. I kind of like Tanner McKee a little bit too. So
okay. So
I guess
we'll
we move on. So I mean,
yeah.
as I was just researching my teams, I was pretty much saying you need Corral and Young, but I guess you're right. I mean, right there, you're talking $19,000. So that's a lot. And then Bijan, I guess so. I guess you can make the decision though. If you don't play Bijan, you can be fine then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All
Because
right.
you can go with a cheap running back, and then maybe an Evans or just a couple cheap running backs and go from there. We're gonna get to our guy Travion Henderson here when we talk about OSU at 6'6" in play. So there's some options.
Yeah, I think you need Bijan after we saw what SMU did to TCU.
Yeah,
like you said, I think Bijan's got to be in your core with Jakari and Bryce Young. So
I don't think it's the wrong answer if you go both of those quarterbacks and not Bijan, but I'm personally playing Bijan for sure.
No,
and right now I'm young, but I don't think it matters. You're going to get a lot of points no matter what two you play out of there. Right. All right, so moving on to the next game, Cincinnati versus Notre Dame. Game's lost a little of its luster because Cincinnati has kind of stumbled out a little bit. They've still been winning, but they stumbled. Notre Dame just had a hellaciously tough game against Wisconsin, but they ended up winning, and it was impressive. You have a 50.5 over under here. You have -1.5 for Cincy. So, despite Notre Dame, being the home team. This was a game I thought for sure I'd be hitting up, after that first or second game with Notre Dame. But Notre Dame's defense starting to show up. They did good against Benson Malusi. That was the first RB that they really held from making value against them. I do feel like Jerome Ford is in play, but he's more of a GPP play at this point. So I'll start with Cincy. Jerome Ford at 6'8". Back-to-back 100-yard games going to Indiana, and then he got a little, he was held under 70, but he still scored 2 touchdowns, so had almost 20 fantasy points. He's getting a very high volume amount of touches in this offense. So he's definitely a guy to look at. I think for GPPs, he's going to be very low owned. And he's getting, like I said, a lot of the work. Cincinnati's defense is very elite as well, or they have been. So I'm feeling kind of rough about using Notre Dame guys. As far as the receivers go for Cincinnati, Alec Pierce and Michael Young are the target leaders with 14 each. The Tyler Scott kid is a really exciting play. He's got 7 of his 8 targets for 172 and 2, but again, we're probably not using any of these guys. However, if you do go with that Matt Bijan, young lineup and you need some sub 5K options, you are looking at Scott at 4.6. Alec Pierce, who 2.5 years ago, we all thought Alec Pierce was going to be a megastar in this conference, and he really hasn't, but he's only 4.3. Against IU, he had 5 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. So he did look more like what we thought he would be, and Ritter was finding him. So I think that Pierce is playable here against Notre Dame, but I'm really, I bang that drum about taking running backs against Notre Dame. I'm just, I'm looking at this price of Alec Pierce at 4.3, and I feel like he can make value here. So I do like him. I do think Jerome Ford is solid. Projections at 2 different sites have him hovering around 20 fantasy points. That's pretty strong at 6'8", I'd say. So they're obviously taking into account, something there against Notre Dame. And then my guy Ritter, he's only 7'5", and I know he hasn't looked super, the last couple of games that great. He did eke out against Indiana at 24, so he ended up coming around 20 for 36, 210, a touchdown. He rushed for a touchdown as well. Finally got his rushing game going, which we hadn't seen yet. So I think we see him step up mega. I probably would use him as a GPP guy at 7.5, but anytime you get Ritter under 8K, it's really hard to not be super interested, at least for me. Because we know what he can do, and I think he does rise to the occasion in this game. I don't know if I'm willing to use him as my my super flex right now with these other high scoring games projected. I feel like he could eke it out and they win like 21-14 or something, and then you're staring at all these games that are 52-45 and shit like that, and it's gonna feel bad. So he has a GPP play though, because he could end up scoring all the touchdowns. If they score 21 and he has all 3, you're still feeling pretty damn good at 7.5. So Ford and Ritter in play, and then borderline, I think Alec Pierce at 4.3 is close to being a value cash play. We'll see as we move through the rest of these games here if you unearth any value or what we see in the other ones. But as far as 4.3 receivers go, they don't get much better than Pierce, because this was a guy that we thought was going to be in the 7K range for the rest of his career, because he kind of burst on the scene, but he's dealt with injuries and a few other issues. But last game was encouraging, definitely. Notre Dame, Drew Pine, Buckner, Cone, they're all splitting practice reps. Don't even really need to worry about talking to them. We're not using the QB against Cincy. We are looking at Kieran Williams at 5K though, and he was real bad against Wisconsin. I do think this one has a chance to be a rock fight as well, and I have my concerns here. But 5K for a player of his magnitude is very intriguing. But you just have to ask yourself, how much does the matchup matter here? At 5K, he could probably hit 3x, right? And I know that he catches balls as well. We saw Tyree last game get a return touchdown, so that kind of upped his score a little bit. He's up there at 4.8, but man, the prices on Ritter and Kieran Williams are just so intriguing, but the matchup is just it's so bad. Michael Mayer, Baby Gronk at 5.5, he's definitely intriguing. He leads the team in targets with 34, although Kevin Austin is at the last couple of games been creeping up to him. He now has 31, 14 catches, 230 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I like Austin a lot. We had mentioned a couple weeks ago that Notre Dame hasn't really had these NFL bound receivers recently, but it looks like Austin is going to be that guy against Wisconsin. 6 catches, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. I had used him in that FSU game in week 1. He had 491 and a touchdown. I really like him a lot. So I think he's in play at least for GPP because nobody's going to be really looking to this game. And it's not as if they're both going to score 0 points. This is the type of game where you would expect the team stars, Baby Gronk, Austin Williams, Ritter, Ford, to actually step up and rise to the occasion. It's just that the totals on the other games, 4 or 5 other games, are just so sexy. You can't really be stacking a game like this unless it's in your own. But the prices are intriguing. So before we move on to that Oregon Stanford game, when you look at this 5K Kieran Williams, do you have interest in him there, or are you like, no, the game's just too low scoring?
No, man. When you see Kieran Williams at 5K,
it's intriguing, man. It's intriguing.
It's very intriguing. It's almost intriguing as Alec Pierce at 4.3. So
yeah.
If I'm making 3 lineups, I probably will have Kieran Williams as a running back. One of them. He's too talented.
Yeah.
I think he's a better running back than Jerome Ford. When Jerome Ford's almost 2K more. I know it's different situations, what I mean? But Kieran Williams at 5K, and he hasn't had the blow up game yet. And it could, since he's got a decent defense and all that, but it's going to come at one point. He's too good of a football player, so. I would probably think if I'm point per dollar, I would say he's one of the top 6 running backs in this league. A little bit stretched there, but I like it
because even if he rushes for like 50 yards only, he could still score a touchdown. But he also gets receiving work. We can see him, bust a 30-yard touchdown, and then he's right there at 5K. Where I was thinking in terms of 7K, like he needs this 100+ and 2 touchdowns. Well, he's at a different price point than we're used to seeing. He doesn't need that this time. He only needs 1 touchdown and 80 yards to really make value, and you can definitely do that.
Ford's got to work for it.
Yeah. So something to think about, guys, because I know there's going to be very low owned guys from this game, but they've priced it so cheap that I think there's still value here, even if it ends up being like a 24-21 type of game. So, all right. So moving along here, we are now on Oregon versus Stanford, and there's actually some plays in this game too. And you mentioned there's McKee, but I like a little bit of this game. It looks like it could be a nice one.
Yeah, and you can maybe add some of this on the M's. You're a West Coast guy, but so we got Stanford at home, Oregon visiting. Oregon's 8-point favorite on the road, 58 over under, which is like mid-range, hobby on the slate. The lowest of the slate is 43.5. Wisconsin, Michigan, highest 79 Alabama. So this Stanford. Oregon game was right in the middle there, like 58. So nice healthy total. But my problem is it's tough to get behind Oregon, some of these Oregon players. First, when you look at their targets, just look at receivers, Johnny Johnson, Hudson, Red, they're all, Ferguson, all between like 10 and 15 targets. And then you look at their running backs, you got the 2-headed monster at running back. So with Verdell and Travis Dye, great GVP plays, but you can't use guys to cash. Quarterback Anthony Brown, can he be an option? Yeah, but also he can end up handing the ball off to Verdell and Travis Dye all game. So, and then not get a decent DFS score. So to me, I struggle playing any of these Oregon players. I don't see They could all, to me, great GP plays. Brown with his legs could end up having a good game. Like I said, you could also end up just handing off to Dye and Verdell and doing shit. So on the other side, Tanner McKee, I like this kid, 6'5", and I was just reading. I know it's coach speak, but Mario Cristobal for Oregon actually is saying, and I kind of agree with him. He's saying that Tanner McKee is right now could be the best quarterback he's faced since he became head coach. And I know that's a lot. I mean, because you think about it, McKee's only made 3 starts since he replaced Jack West. But the kids played well. I mean, he's completed over 2/3 of his passes, 67.5% to be exact. He hasn't thrown an interception all season, thrown 8 touchdowns. He ranks 7th nationally in QBR. And the kid can actually run too. He's a big kid. He's 6'6", 228. So he can run. He actually ran a touchdown in against USC and Vanderbilt. So this kid gets no respect at all. A lot of these West Coast guys. And when you got Cristobal calling McKee one of the best players, he's played against this year Jake Hayner. Let's say the last couple of years, Jake Browning, Gardner Minshew, a lot of these guys, Brock Purdy. So when he's calling McKee the best quarterback he's seen, I said, once again, I know his coach speak, but it says something about the way McKee's playing right now. So at 6'5", I like Tanner McKee a lot. I said, it's a nice healthy total where you play McKee as your super flex with Young, you can pretty much get all the players you want besides Matt Corral. So that's my take on McKee. I like McKee a lot. The receivers, guys like Bryson Tremaine, Elijah Higgins, I think they're all in play. They get decent volume. 24 targets for Tremaine, Higgins 22 targets. And then your running back, Nathaniel Pete, he's pretty much, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, Pete is pretty much starting to enter into bell cow territory, isn't he? I mean, he's pretty much, I'm trying to call up his numbers now. So his last against UCLA ran about 13 times. So he gets 4 or 5 targets also. I'm not saying he's a great back, which he isn't, but at 5'5", it's not bad. You may know more about Nathaniel Pete than I do. What's your plan on him? I'm kind of intrigued by Pete at 5'5".
Yeah, and it helps that Austin Jones is questionable, borderline doubtful.
Right, I think he's going to be out, right?
Yeah, so I mean, he's right now. Well, he might have been marked out since today. I know heading into this morning, he was highly questionable, so it sounded like he was pretty much out. So Pete should definitely get the work. Oregon, on paper, their rush defense is surrendering just about 140 yards, but they have gotten waxed on that. There's been a couple games where they've given up some big scores. So I think at 5'5", he's definitely in play. He's going to get, probably 15 plus touches against this Oregon offense or defense. So he's in play. I mean, and that would be like, if you're going to fade Bijan, and you need a cheap guy to go with those quarterbacks or whatever, I think it's certainly an option.
I just saw too, Oregon has given up the most passing yards on the slate at 286. So that kind of does put in play some of these receivers, like Tremaine and Higgins, I think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, so you know more about Oregon than I do. What do you think of these receivers? Or do you like McKee?
McKee, definitely. Yeah. I think that's a good price for him. He looks good. He's definitely solid. I think that at 6'5" is playable. He's even cheaper than Hooker, and that could be your potential QB too, because the Oregon defense is not as good as we thought it was going to be. They've been banged up and they're surrendering points. So I would more apt to play McKee over Pete. As far as the receivers go, they're a bit tough to peg just because they've had some injuries here and there and pulling up their targets. Bryson Tremaine, 24 targets, Elijah Higgins, 22. The guy that I thought would be, the man, Michael Wilson hasn't played yet. I don't know when he's going to be back.
Problem? He was a stud at one point, right? I mean,
yeah. He's had a foot, there's been a foot problem, and they've been really secretive about how severe it is. But obviously, it's very severe because he hasn't played yet. So, I could see running Higgins though at 4.9 as like a pairing partner.
He'd probably be the play, right?
McKee. Yeah, just because at 4.9 he's pretty cheap. Tremaine's getting a lot of more, I think, quality
at 4 TDs.
And his touchdown equity is better, but if you need a little bit of a discount, Higgins has shown ability to be more of a burner. Yeah, he's more of a burner. He's getting the deep ball, so it just depends on how much salary you're working with. But one of those two guys definitely. And then I was going to say Stanford. I wanted to point out, you might have already kind of mentioned it, but Stanford's giving up 212 yards in the ground. So this sets up as a big time running back game for Oregon. So CJ Verdell might be a little high for my taste at 7K, but Travis Dye at 5.3, I think is firmly in play. I know he only got 5 carries against Arizona. But if he gets like that 13 to 15 mark, like he's seen a couple times this year, he blasts that 5.3 price against Stanford. And he's actually been over double-digit points in all 4 games so far. So I know playing Oregon players isn't very sexy. I certainly don't play their wide receivers ever. We've been over this a couple of times now. They're just too high variance. But I could see you running out of Travis Dye against a defense that's surrendering 212 yards in the ground. Stanford, just their front seven their defensive front is horrible.
Johnny Johnson is the only receiver with over double figures receptions. He only has 10.
Yeah, it's terrible. They have a running quarterback. I knew this would happen with Brown. Yeah, he was going to. They have talent at wide receiver too, but just the last 2 or 3 seasons, they don't have anyone that's consistently able to step up because they just prefer to run the ball. So you've got all these guys under 4K that people are going to talk themselves into on Saturday, and it's probably not going to work out. So, but yeah, I like some Travis Dye at 5.3. I think I could get down with that, and then use Verdell as like a GPP option because Verdell doesn't get that many carries more. I know he had the 43.5 fantasy points in week 2 against Ohio State, but he rarely does that. Although he could against Stanford because of how bad they are. But I want some exposure to this Oregon running back situation. I think when I see a stat like that, I want some exposure. But yeah, I like your call on McKee. I think McKee, Higgins are in play. Pete, I'm not as high on, but I think GPP wise, you could use him because with Jones out or likely out, and then their RB3 is also out, so there's going to be a lot of carries coming his way potentially. All right, Texas Tech versus West Virginia, 56 over under -8 for West Virginia. We have the West Virginia defense. Let's see, they're giving up only 307 yards per offense, just 89 on the ground, so not a lot of sexiness to be had there. Texas Tech, a little bit of a different situation. They're giving up about 125 in the ground, 255 through the air. So their defense has been decent, but they got exposed last week. So I think they've been just their opponents that they played. They had a game against FIU and SFA that made their defense look a little better. They gave up 70 to Texas last week. So I don't think their defense is as good as their numbers maybe show once they start playing some good opponents here. And that starts for me at West Virginia, Letty Brown. He's been a stud for years. His price seems stuck at 6.9. He had a rough go of it last week, and he was kind of chalky actually, but his yardage hasn't really been there. That's the scary thing. I know he had a 161 against Virginia Tech, but he's been hovering around that 75 mark for yardage. But he's punching in a lot of touchdowns. He has 6 on the season, 1 of the receiving as well. So I think there's a good chance to get him going against the Texas Tech team that, like I said, their defense is not nearly as good as it looks, on paper because of their opponents. Bijan just went for 137 against them. Roshan Johnson, their RB2, rushed for 64 and 2 touchdowns. And we know they got torched to the air. So I like Letty to kind of maybe even be a little low owned, kind of, announce himself back to the world again with a 100+ multi-touchdown game. And at 6'9", he would be the guy if you're running, Matt Corral and Bryce Young, and you can't fit Bijan. I think you got to play Letty Brown because I think he does have the upside in this matchup, and it's a good price point for him. And I would feel more comfortable running him than Verdell or even, Zach Evans, who I know is good. I think Letty Brown's not getting the respect he probably deserves. And if you don't run Bijan, I think that's who you run. So I'm definitely on the Brown train here. As far as let's pull it up. West Virginia receivers, Winston Wright leads the team in targets with 26, Bryce Ford Wheaton 25, and Sam James with 22. Fourth is Letty Brown with 13. So he's also getting that passing work, kind of drive home that Letty Brown point. So I do like this West Virginia team a little bit. Sam James probably a little too high at 5K, but Ford Wheaton's 4.6, Wright Jr. 4.8. They're getting peppered with targets quite well. Jared Doege, he not very consistent. He's been pretty borderline bad this year. So that inconsistency of him has really hurt the team. So it's tough to really trust any of them in cash. But why GPPs, I think Texas Tech, any team that gives up 70 points, I think you have to at least consider their opponent the following week because they got their asses whipped. So Letty Brown is a cash play, though. I don't think with the type of build we might be trying to accomplish at first glance, we got fit him. But if you decide to go those two upper tier price quarterbacks, I think Letty Brown has to be in your lineup. Texas Tech, Chuck, man, he got hurt and he wasn't looking too good anyways. He's out for a few weeks. They're going to be rolling with Henry Colombi, who did look pretty good. He had 27 fantasy points, 3 touchdowns, 324. I don't think anyone should chase that, though. I know it looks good on paper. He's going to have to throw a lot to keep up with West Virginia, but their defense is just way too good to be really targeting any Texas Tech, guys in your main lineup at that. Taj Brooks the running back, they've been running 3 guys. Taj Brooks is going to be sitting out. I believe he's doubtful at last glance. So Roderick Thompson at 4.6 would ordinarily look like a good play, especially if he doesn't have to share carries. But just mentioned West Virginia is only giving up 89.5 rushing yards per game. So it's tough to target any of them as well. And I know that people have been trying to make the receivers for Texas Tech work. Ezukama's had a couple of nice games, but 6'3" might be too high for him. Geiger, Travis Kuntz looked good for a game or two there, but there's just not enough consistency in this offense, and they're playing way too good of a defense for me to really look at. So keep it short and simple and let you guys know it's Letty Brown here for cash, and then everything else is just GPP. I don't think I want to get involved too much with anyone else in this game. All right, we have 2 games left: Oklahoma and Kansas State.
First of all,
not going to be winning the Heisman this year, like people said.
First of all, your Mariners are right now officially tied for the wild card.
Who did the Orioles close?
Yeah,
game over.
Nice. Red Sox lost, so right now Seattle and Boston are tied with 560 winning percentage. I don't know what.
Dang, I wish we had a game today.
Shit. But both 80, so they're both 89 and 70, so they both have the same amount of games left.
And it looks like your Yankees are going to win.
Yep, we're up 5-2. So Toronto should probably going to fall back to 1 game, and we're going to go up 2 on everybody. So, wow, so exciting.
Yeah,
honestly, it's exciting to be a Mariner fan. But it's going back to 1995, man. That broke my heart. That's before the Yankees dynasty with the double with Edgar Martinez. So all right, so back to football. Oklahoma, Kansas State. This is another weird one. So we got, what's the over on here? You got me. I got baseball on my mind. Why can't I got 52 and a half. 52 and a half. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
52 and a half. We got Oklahoma's on the road. 32-25 implied. Kansas State 20-25 implied. So Oklahoma 12-point favorite. I know Marvin Mims is real popular this week because he's 4.8. I keep hearing it's Marvin Mims week. It's Marvin Mims week. To me,
everyone always says that.
GVP play. To me, it's only GVP play. But it's just weird because, I mean, Mims, he's getting he's getting 3 targets a game.
Yeah,
he's not catching the big touchdowns. Thing is, I mean, he's got the same quarterback as last year, same coaches last year. He had 9 touchdowns last year. So, I do think this is kind of a get right game for Rattler and Mims and these guys. I mean, Oklahoma really has not looked good in offense.
Nope.
I still think there's a get right game here. I don't think Oklahoma's as great as everybody thought they were. I also don't think they're as bad as everybody thinks they are right now. I do think you got to see a Rattler game here coming.
Sure.
But I don't know. I mean, everybody's trying to compare them like the Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, these guys. These are guys who were able to kind of explore the backfield. That's not Spencer Rattler. So Rattler's not as good as anybody thinks they are, but I mean, I'm not saying he's terrible either. So I like Rattler's GPP plays. I just think that there's a get right game coming here eventually. I think it may be this week against Kansas State. If it's not, then Rattler he's just not the quarterback everybody thought he was. So GPP only. Of course, he's not going to play him in cash. Mims, people may be playing him in cash because he's 4.8. To me, GPP only.
Yeah, no. Oklahoma receivers in cash is a trouble written all over it.
Exactly. I like Jordan Hazelwood. 6K is too expensive. I guess if anything, I probably would play Mims. He's only 4.8. But none of these guys on the running back side. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Eric Gray's only 5'4", so he hasn't had the beginning of the season they thought he was going to have, or the beginning of his career everybody thought he was going to have. He's been kind of he hasn't played the backfield of his own. I mean, you got Kenny Brooks now nosing in there too. But if you look at last week, it was like the first time feel like Gray was kind of starting to put it together. So if he kind of continues that momentum this week, he may be okay against Kansas State, but GDP only. But I kind of like Kennedy Brooks a little bit more. But this is more all GBP plays. Kansas State, honestly, I don't have much interest in Kansas State at all. I'm a huge Deuce guy. But 7-2, he's been consistent. He's finding the end zone, pretty much every game. They're going to be chasing points. So, he should have a bunch of opportunities as a receiver and runner. But I still think 7-2 for Deuce is GVP play only. So I don't have a lot of GVP good feelings in this game at all. I mean, fantasy. Rattler GVP, Deuce GVP, Gray and Mims, this is all GVP plays. That's it. Instead, I mean, and between Brooks and Gray, I don't know, man. This. If you're making cash lineups, none of these guys. If you're making, say, a 3 max, maybe a Rattler, hook them up with a Mims, and that's it. Maybe throw Deuce in there, but beside that, it's all MME plays to me. And Skylar Thompson, I'm hearing he may come back. I mean, he's got the knee injury, but even if he does come back, I mean, you can't. I mean, I have no faith in Will Howard.
Yeah, it's amazing because when it first happened, they said he was done for the year, and the pictures look bad. But now I hear he's coming.
Howard's banged up too
next week. So yeah, Howard is. I don't know how Howard's bad. I was upset that they beat Nevada with Howard, but yeah, Skylar comes back.
Lewis actually looked better than Howard last week.
It'll save their season if Skylar can come back. So I don't know that he'll be able to play this Saturday, but stranger things have happened, definitely.
Right.
We've made good money fading a chalk. Well, overall, Rattler's been that chalkier option every week, and I
played him 1 week and got burned.
Yeah, and then you were off him with me, and I've been playing like the Ritters over him or whoever else because I just haven't believed in him, and I know he's put up big stats and he's done it in the past, but something about Rattler just never was sold on him. So I've been able to fade him as a chalkier play. I did try to test, mess around with Oklahoma receivers with Asselwood last week on that night slate because he was only 5K and he didn't come through for me. It almost seems like Mario Williams has become the best receiver on this team, or the most consistent at least. So it's definitely a good spot to target because Kansas State's rush defense is borderline elite. However, their opponents haven't been. They're only allowing 75 yards, but when they played Oklahoma State, Jalen Warren went for 120 plus. So it's all in the context there of who they played, but they're giving up almost 260 yards through the air. So yeah, if this is a week for them to come off, yeah, like you said, it'll be this week, but Mims' price is good, but it doesn't change the fact that he's still a very volatile play because of that offense. So even though he's 4.8, you could still be looking at getting 3 fantasy points from him. So people are going to get excited about that. And I think they should pump the brakes. So I'm right there with you. It's GPP only because it's not a guarantee. Just because his price drop doesn't mean suddenly he's guaranteed to perform. That's what people forget sometimes. In football, basketball, it doesn't matter. You got to play them in the cheat, but in football, you can get away without. All right. Last game, Ohio State versus Rutgers, 56.5 over under, minus 15.5 for Ohio State. Ohio State, they got some really good options at QB, especially when Quinn Ewers is ready to play. But, McCord came on and played a good game against Akron. They blew him out. He had, a solid 319 yards, 2 touchdowns, only completed 13 passes. 319 yards on 13 completions is insanity. It does sound like Stroud is going to play. I think we'll see. I mean, and he's had a good week is what they're saying, and he's been practicing, so we'll see. I'm not really that concerned about it because I'm not going to play an Ohio State quarterback anyways, so it doesn't matter to me. As far as Rutgers defense goes right now, they've only allowed 150 yards through the air. On the ground, that's about a 115, so their defense has been good, but again, they haven't played a lot of quality opponents, so that's that number skewed a little bit. On the Buckeyes, giving up 155 yards on the ground, 255 through the air. Their defense has been very, very rough. So I think in GBP's Rutgers guys are in play, but sticking with Ohio State for a moment, I'm not looking at their quarterbacks. I do like Travion Henderson. A couple weeks ago on that afternoon slate, I rolled him against Tulsa, and he really panned out for us. 277 for 3 touchdowns. Came back last week against Akron on just eight carries for two touchdowns, 93 yards. So he's clearly taken that job from my end. Master Teague's kind of an afterthought. So I definitely am a fan and want exposure. Probably wouldn't be my main. However, if I didn't play Bijan, this would be a spot where, I'm playing Letty Brown and probably Henderson, because I think he's going to get the work, each and every week going forward. And like I said, that Rutgers defense, it's going to look better on paper than it is, in reality, just because we got to look at their opponents and say, oh, well, they haven't played an offense of the magnitude of Ohio State yet. Delaware, Temple, Syracuse, no offense to your guys, but there wasn't that great. However, I will say against Michigan, they held Blake Corum to 68 yards and Haskins to 41. So, I mean, I guess maybe there is a concern there for Henderson if they can slow those guys down. Wide receiver, Olave 7'3", Wilson 6'9". They're finally priced close together, and they're finally priced where I was worried that Wilson was going to come out like 5'2" or something stupid, and we'd all have to play him. He's still a good play at 6'9", but he's firmly in GPP territory. I do kind of like the Jackson Smith Ningbigba play at 5'9", $1K cheaper. Definitely has a lot of, as far as targets, he's third with 21, right behind Olave. It's 30, 39 for Wilson. So it's firmly those three in the mix. So I do kind of like him. He has 3 touchdowns, same as Olave and Wilson. So his touchdown equity is fine in this offense. And then as far as Rutgers goes, I kind of think for GPPs, Pacheco has some upside here. We've seen Ohio State, get burned on the ground a few times by various opponents. Against Michigan, which is a tough rush defense in their own right, Pacheco rushed for 107 yards on 20 carries, had a couple of receptions, 17 fantasy points. The week before that against Delaware, he had 2 rushing touchdowns. And then against Temple, he had a rushing touchdown. So he's kind of a bowling ball type player at 4'8". I think he could very well end up scoring 15 plus fantasy points with, 2% ownership. So I do feel like he's a bit of a sneakier play if you're looking for some exposure here in the late hammer or a way to exploit Ohio State's defense, especially on the road. I think they could come out, struggling a little bit. And then our guy, Bo Melton, is priced down finally, from 6'1", 5'7" to 4'9", which he's in play even if he was higher. He does lead the team with targets in 35. He has 25 catches, 260 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So Rutgers is definitely going to be looking his way. He's averaging right around 6 receptions per game. So at 4'9", if we get like a 670 and 1 touchdown line, we feel pretty good about it. So he's definitely in play for those high price quarterback lineups that you're trying to run, and you need a value guy. At 4'9", Bo Melton, you typically won't find better than that. And then Aaron Cruikshank at 3'4" is kind of interesting. He does have 22 targets on the year, 14, 104, no touchdowns yet. But I think the Rutgers guys are a little cheap here, and nothing scares me about Ohio State's defense just yet. Even Vedral at 5'5" is kind of interesting for GPPs. I wouldn't run him in my main, but he has rushing upside, so he could very well pay out 5'5" in this game.
Yeah, and I have interest in Noah Vedral too at 5'5", just because they're going to be, if the Buckeyes pile on points, he's going to be having plenty of opportunities to keep, try and keep up. Once again, garbage points count too, right? So he should have plenty of opportunities for that. So 5'5" is a pretty decent price for him.
Yeah, I think a Rutgers mini stack in one of your GPPs with a Vedral, Melton, and maybe even a Cruikshank or one of these guys like Haskins or something. Could do some damage. Yeah, they could do some damage. And then, like I said, Pacheco, I might be a little too high on him, but I could see him really hurting Ohio State. Yep. The way Verdell did, maybe not to the degree that Verdell did them, like 200 plus and 3 touchdowns, but wouldn't surprise me to see him hit 100 plus and 2 scores against them. So
No, I
you
agree.
guys definitely don't
quarterback.
want to sleep on Rutgers. So
Nope.
let's pull up some prize picks. I don't see somebody's asking NFL questions in the chat. Might be trolling. I'm gonna pull up some prize pick stuff. And then do you want to mention a core while we're pulling up prize picks?
Yeah, I think actually the core is kind of basic. I mean, I Bryce Young, Bijan Robinson, Jakari Roberson, I think is pretty much your basic core. It's going to be a popular core. It's going to be a chalky core. It's going to matter what you're going to do with the rest of the plays. And I think the key of this whole slate is going to be what are you going to do at Superflex, where you're going to go to quarterback 2. That's going to actually force you to where else you're going to be able to play other players. But it all comes down to that Bama Ole Miss game, I think.
Yeah. And right now I feel like, and I agree with you on the court, I feel like taking a semi-cheaper super flex quarterback is going to help unlock the rest of the slate for you. And then taking, you mentioned Billingsley, who's clearly out of the doghouse now, maybe Sanders, or if you're taking a cheaper quarterback, maybe that allows you to get a guy like Drummond or Mingo or even Jameson. I know you mentioned Mechie being really good, and he is. But Jameson, and you were on him that first week. He's good. Yeah, I know he's 7.7 is a high price, but shit, if you could fit him in their lineup, he's going to get like 5-6 catches, over 100 yards, maybe even 2 touchdowns. So I really like him this week. I wish he was a little cheaper, but that's going to be a big time play if you can fit him. So just depends how you go with that second quarterback. And we may, by the time lock rolls around, we may be saying, nope, we're playing Matt Corral and we're playing Bryce Young, and that's that. So we'll see. Right now, I think Bijan's just too good to fade, but things can change in an instant. So be ready for that. Prize picks wise, there is a few. There was 2 that I gave. Let me pull this up real quick because there's 2 that I really liked that I gave to G earlier for the video they were going to make. Jordan Addison over 87.5 receiving yards. Number 1 receiver on Pitt. He's got 100 plus receiving yards back-to-back games.
Definitely.
All-star stud. So I'm on that. And then Brandon Thomas from Memphis, over 92.5 rushing yards. He's got almost 500 yards in 4 games. YPC of 7-1. Facing Temple. Bang. Let me get it. They're giving up 170 yards in the game per ground. So Thomas and Addison are my 2 favorite plays on Prize Picks.
What do you think of Pacheco over 56.5 yards rushing?
Definitely, yeah. I'm almost considering playing Pacheco as one of my 3 running backs.
Yeah, I like Pacheco too.
I think he hits that over. I think he's somewhere between 75 to 80.
I like him. I like the Letty over 84.5. Trayvon's at 105 and 105.5.
They're going wild.
Yeah.
Kevin Harris is now taking the last game against Kentucky. He had the most snaps, the most carries. So I think he's starting to shake off the rust. Versus Troy there, they have him at 67.5 rushing yards. So I was going to ask,
that's kind of low, right, for Kevin Harris?
Yeah, because
he hasn't had the greatest.
I think he's going to get a full workload now. I think he's finally now, because the first game back he didn't have.
He's a good player. He's good runner.
Most snaps, and now that he had the most snaps and the most carries, I think he's back. I think he's ready to go.
And do I see anybody else in the?
They've added some.
What about Mechie? What about John Mechie? 67.5 receiving.
Yeah, I could see
Jameson
that.
Williams 69.
They have. If you look at the total receptions, they have Jameson Williams receptions at 3.5. I know he's a burner, so sometimes I think it's 2, but in this game he should get 4+, right?
Yeah. In this game, I got receptions here now. What do we? What's the reception? What do you have now?
3.5 for
Jameson Williams. Jameson, definitely take that over 3.5. Definitely. You got Mechie at 6. Jameson Williams over 3.5. Yeah, good play.
Yeah, that seems low. I know sometimes he gets like 2 catches and 100, but I think that's in blowout games. This is a game where he's going to play a full run. Yeah, he should get well over 4. Let's see if we can pull a couple more here. Sometimes the rushing touchdowns are low. Now, I wish they would have given us the other kid small, but Tyon Evans over 0.5 rushing touchdowns. They could both score pretty easily.
There's not a lot right now, unless they add on. You got
they've added some since you've been earlier, but they'll add more by the time even tomorrow comes. But I think the ones that we highlighted there are definitely the strongest.
Bijan at 1. I mean, is he gonna have 2 rushing touchdowns? Probably, but
Yeah. Tanner
that's
McKee
kinda
here, and
boring.
then passing yards. Tanner McKee, 211.5 passing yards.
over. But take my man Tanner McKee is he's my adopted favorite quarterback this year. So take Tanner McKee over 211.
Yeah, so I think that works. That's some good ones for you guys. When the article comes out early tomorrow, I'll have my top 5. So there's some good ones. So definitely soft. This is a soft week. Last week they kind of tightened up, but it seems like they've definitely gotten softer here. So appreciate it, guys. I think that's going to bring us to the end. I will be back Saturday morning for the pre-lock show where I'll talk any last minute injury news, depth chart stuff, sometimes by the time Saturday rolls around, we've changed our mind. I have some additional thoughts. So that will be Saturday morning, 8 a.m. PST, 11 a.m. EST. MLB stuff still rolling through here. This is my last week at YFC. Pete, it's been a very pleasure. You brought me in and I appreciate that, but something tells me this won't be the last of us working together or even me being at YFC. There's a solid chance I could end up back here in the near future. So we don't know. The baby bird's got to leave the nest once in a while. So I'm just going to see what else is out there for a bit, but doesn't mean I won't be back. And I'll still be talking to you guys, of course.
No, and it's bittersweet because you've worked hard. You've been in this business a long time. You've been one of the top college basketball touts for the last 8-9 years. Somebody I've looked up to. Somebody before I became a tout, I followed you, followed your websites, played your plays. So you deserve the best. It's a good move for you. YFC, is a growing site. So, some good things happening here, but, it's time for you to make a move. I totally agree. I'll be still here doing CFB. But, seriously, wish you the luck. It's been a good run for the Super Show, and hopefully it's not wood forever. But, you're a good man. I wish you the best luck, brother, you and your family. And it's just the beginning. You made me cry. I'm gonna get teary-eyed, man. I love you, man. I love you.
But yeah, that's it for the show. I'll be back Saturday morning, as I said, and let's really go out with a bang on this next Friday, Saturday, and get some takedowns, guys. I want to see not just me and Pete, but I want to see you guys get some takedowns too. So appreciate the support over the last year and a half, and best of luck this weekend. Thanks, guys. See ya. And thanks to Mickey.
Thanks, Mickey. Your producer.
Really done a good job. So appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
It's been a pleasure working with you.
In my garage, most my partners caught to charge for all this love like elder bars. Fresh dressed, living large, German whips in my garage. Most my partners caught to charge for all this love like elder bars.
German whips, fancy cars, they play the game, but they know who the champions are. Every time we pull up, it's like a damn bazaar. They scream our name, try to get us on the camera. Flashing lights, though I ain't the flashy type. I just push a big whips with the fastest pipes. Can't match his price. I don't nigga catch for life, but I still never pay the full package price. And fuck the laws, they can suck these balls. I'll be riding the fly shit till I rust the walls. Yeah, so pull up, nigga. What? Please stay, get pulled up in the trunk. Yeah. And my bass go bump. The thing I pack at my waist make your face go slump. Put me on the track, watch your place go dumb. T-O-R-O-N-T on the place I'm from. Yes.
Fresh dressed, living large, German whips in my garage. Most my partners caught to charge for all this love like elder bars. Fresh dressed, living large, German whips in my garage. Most my partners caught to charge for all this love like elder bars. I got a sick, thick flow, silk shirts, and no, I never rock flip flops with an open toe. Not in a red Lambo, but the Benz is fine. A leather black